Hello everyone, welcome to this session. Let's discuss about the interactive nature of the organisms in the environment. Our chapter is balance of nature. So today we are going to see how the various organisms interact to each other within the environment, either living organisms with the non-living organisms, or just living organisms themselves. So we'll start with the first one, that is ways in which the non-living organisms they interact with the living components or the living organisms of the environment. We'll see how the non-living organisms interact with the living components through the water cycle. So this water cycle is one of the ways in just see which these non-living and living components of the environment interact with each other, as explained here with the diagram below. This is a diagram of water cycle. As you can see, maybe it starts from here whereby the rain lanes to this place or on this land. Now, after some runaways of the rainwater, they land and they flow towards the oceans, and they can even percolate or they can even uh, flow within the land, and later on they just flow back to the oceans. Now, after that, after flowing to the oceans, after gathering together, after some time, when there's kind of heating done by the sunlight, there is an action that occurs, that is the evaporation, whereby these kinds of water turns into gas or vapor. Now, in that way, also, the water that is from the plants that has been obtained from the rain also is obtained also by the transpiration process, or whereby the water is lost from the plants by this process of evaporation towards the sky. Now, after some time, the condensation occurs. The condensation, it turns this kind of a vapor into these clouds. Now, these clouds, when they are formed already, then for some time after maybe winds passes, then it forms back to land place, whereby there is rain going to rain. So that's simply how the water cycle, how it works. Now we can see the interaction between the non-living components. Hereby we're talking about the water, how it can be formed within this water cycle. We are talking about the formation of the rain. There's kind of interaction within the plants here, whereby the transpiration process occurs. Now, briefly, all what I've said can be seen in the explanations below. The groundwater and the water from the rain flow into the streams and the rivers simply after the rain that has already rained. Now the stream and the rivers flow into the lakes and the ocean. So the streams and the rivers they collect the water together into the lakes and the ocean. Now after that, after the heating of the sun, by some time the water that is from the oceans and the lakes uh, the water evaporates into the atmosphere from the lakes and the ocean, and from the plants also through the process of the transpiration process. Now, that's how the water that is from these various parts from the oceans, plus that from the plants. Here we see that the interaction between uh, the living component, that is the plants with the non-living components, that is uh, the lakes and the oceans, that they together contribute to the evaporated amount of water that is taken to the atmosphere. Now, the evaporated water precipitates from the water vapor, which condenses later on from the clouds. Now, after the formation of clouds, the wind causes the clouds to move, for example, from the above the oceans or lakes to above the land, whereby the rainfall and absorb the rainfall and absorbed by plants and form grounds water, and the cycle begins again. So that's how it happens. So the rain falls after it has been moved to these clouds have been moved by the wind to the land. So the rain falls, and the water is absorbed by the plants or just from the grounds they form also the groundwater, and the cycle, that is the water cycle, begins again. So I hope that's clear. Moving on. Let's see the interaction of the organisms among themselves. Here we're talking about the interaction of the living organisms among themselves. Here are some of the ways which the organisms interact to each other. The first one, the competition. Uh, this can be described as that organisms must compete for limited resources in the struggle for their life. For an organism to survive in the ecosystem, it must compete with the partner for the limited resources that are within the ecosystem. I'll take an example, the lions and the leopards, both they hunt the zebras and other animals just so as they can obtain the food, and therefore they are competitors for the limited resources that is food within the ecosystem. The other one is the predation. Predation, this is the other form of interaction among the organisms, whereby it's the system in which one organism neutralizes the other organism as food. The eater is the predator, while the eaten one is the prey. Uh, and a number of predators and the prey regulate each other accordingly throughout the ecosystem. Take an example, the cats eat the mice. So this is the other way in which the organisms interact with one another by the process of this predation, whereby the first one, the one that eats the other one, and the eaten one is what we call a prey. The other way of interaction is the symbiosis. This is where there is a close relationship or association between the organisms. This association could take various forms like mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. So these are the forms of symbiosis, and we'll discuss each one of them, starting with the first one, the mutualism. Mutualism, this is the relationship whereby the two organisms benefit each other. For example, the rhizobium bacteria in the root nodules of legumes fix the nitrogen into the nitrate to be used by the plant, but also they themselves, they just get to survive on these root nodules. No, the other one is the commensalism. Commensalism, this is the interaction that is beneficial to one organism and is neutral to the other organism, talking that one organism benefits from the relationship while the other one does not benefit from anything was that kind of relationship. Take an example, when a bird builds a hole or nests in a tree, a bird will get a place to stay there, but a tree does not benefit anything from that kind of relation of the bed towards that kind of a tree. The other one is the parasitism, whereby this is the association whereby one organism benefit while the other one is harmed. Take an example, Plasmodium that cause malaria to human. So this is the third and last uh, form of the symbiosis. Hope that's all clear, all these three of them. Moving on. Let's see the other form of interaction, that is adaptation. Adaptation, this is kind of interaction among the organisms that has enabled the organisms to survive. They may be an automatical adaptations, structural adaptations, physiological adaptations, or behavioral adaptations. So all these are just some of the ways in which organisms they change accordingly just to survive within the environment. Take an example, some organisms are poisonous to their predator, are while others they just develop a warming correlation. So these are just any kind of a ways that the organisms adapt among others just to survive. So that's all clear. Thank you for listening. We've discussed the interaction among organisms in the environment. We've seen in the interaction of the non-living organisms or non-living components to the living components to the environment. Then we've later on seen the interaction of living organisms among themselves in the environment. I hope that's all clear, and thank you.